Andrew, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
we can.
Great.
Okay, we are waiting for one commissioner to establish quorum and then we will begin. Brendan, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Perfect, thank you.
Want me to get started?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. You need the date, Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Veronica Gutierrez. Commissioner Kelly Nobles.
Here.
Commissioner Jennifer Cooper.
Here.
We have quorum.
We've had a chance to review the minutes. Is there any comments about the minutes? The approvals? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes.
I second.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Nancy, do I make the quorum? Do you
Yes.
require me to vote if I'm making the quorum?
No. Quorum is made with the commission chair, and the only way you vote is if we have a tie.
Okay.
Then you're the tiebreaker.
We don't
So-
have to have a minimum of 4?
No. We have to have a minimum of 3 because there's 5 commissioners, so 3 out of 5 is
Thank you for
quorum.
clarifying that for me. Yeah.
Mhm. So if we have a tie, let's say Commissioner Gutierrez votes nay and Commissioner Cooper votes yes, then you would be that tiebreaker.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Of course.
Okay, let's move on to new business. 4.1 Planning Commissioner August, oh, we did that. Magna, better help me with this. Magnatos variance V-3-25. I'm going to call this public hearing to order, ladies and gentlemen. I call this hearing of the Umatilla Planning Commission to order. A sign-up list is available for those who wish to testify. A person must testify either orally or in writing in order to be considered a party to the decision and have the opportunity to appeal. Copies of the applicant criteria are available from staff. The Planning Commission must base its decision on these criteria. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the plan or land use regulations believed to be applicable to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with statements or evidence sufficient to afford us and other interested persons an opportunity to respond to that issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. If new information is presented at the hearing, you may request a continuance to allow additional time to respond. You may also respond to the record. You may also request the record remain open. A request must be made while the record is still open. Procedures for the hearing in the order of the presentations are as followed. Staff will summarize the applications. The applicant may present testimony, public testimony in favor of the application, public testimony in opposition of the application, neutral testimony, rebuttal testimony from the applicant, record closes, deliberation, Planning Commission vote and decision. That concludes the introduction. We will now begin with the first business item on tonight's agenda. It's 4.1, I'm sorry, 5.1 Magnatos variance V-3-25.
Okay,
Is there a challenge? I need to read this first, right?
yes.
Is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the Umatilla Planning Commission to hear this matter? If so, please state that challenge at this time. Are there any conflicts of interest of personal bias to be declared by a commission member? If so, please state the bias or conflict at this time. Has there been any ex parte contacts regarding the upcoming matter that a commission member needs to declare? If so, please state the ex parte contacts at this time. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, so this application, Magatil variance V-3-25, This applicant is requesting a variance, so moving the setback 10 feet instead of 20. And this property is located in our suburban residential zone in our UGB. Speaking to the applicant, the reason why he'd like that variance is because if he takes those complete 20 feet setback as allowed by code, the view to the driveway from that residence is blocked. So the shop would be in front of the residence because of the way that the property is located so close to the river and close to that back property. So he wants to locate this shop in front. And in order for the residents to be able to have a clear view of who is coming down their driveway or who is driving by or any animals, any just safety concerns that he shared, he asked to move it 10 feet away from the property line instead of the 20 that are allowed in code. So again, speaking to fire and code, those 10 feet are not a safety issue. And we had conversations with the applicant about moving it even closer. And I said, I honestly think that 5 feet would be too close in case of an emergency, but I think 10 feet would be perfect for any safety vehicles or anybody that needs to get up and around that area in case of an emergency. Unfortunately, the applicant is not with us today. He is out of town. He said, I'd like to be there. I'd like to speak on my application. But I let him know that I'd speak to the commissioners of the importance of this property. Although this property is a rental, he does want to make sure that his renters feel safe and have clear vision of that driveway and that entryway. And so this is located on South Shore. So we know that Highway 730 is really close. So it's understandable that the applicant has concerns, and we've seen it before, big roads, can sometimes bring big problems and sometimes it doesn't, but it's always nice to have that security. Looking at the site plan, I don't see any issues with this variance. No conditions besides the normal conditions stating that they must obtain all state and federal permits, and anything that is found that has to be reported to CTUIR needs to go through their process. I haven't received any comments since the notice was sent out. So all seems to be good with this application, and staff recommend approval. Do the commissioners have any questions?
At this point, we would have public test or applicant testimony, but since he's not here, not on, we'll move on. Is there any public testimony in favor of the application? Is there any public testimony in opposition of the application? Is there any neutral testimony? No rebuttal testimony from the applicant? Can we have a motion to close the record?
I make the motion that we close the record.
I second.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And so now we'll move into deliberation, and I'll mention, we went through this once before, and we talked with, believe it was Dave. My concern was, if we set this, do we set a precedent so that everybody else can say, well, you did it for him, you did it for me? And Dave said it really is a case by case. There isn't a precedent-setting decision to be made here, which is good to know.
Each variance or each application that we receive is a case by case. There has to be valid concern. We saw this last month with the variance and this variance are both in the UGB. So, and we work very closely with the county to make sure that the planning is done right, and the whatever structure permits have to be obtained, they are obtained by the state. So this one specifically in the case before, they are looked at very differently because they are case by case. So if somebody says, hey, my neighbor's was approved, I want mine approved, if that's the reason, that doesn't sound like a valid reason. If they have safety concerns or this is the absolute only way that they can do this, then that's understood.
Yeah, good.
And so the topography of that area is a little bit different, with some areas are like in the wetland, so they're just kind of, there are certain areas where you're not supposed to put any buildings, so I can understand that need to put that shop close to the front and make sure that whatever you're building is secure and safe.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other comments? No? Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the Magneto variance V-3-25.
I second.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper,
Aye.
the motion passes.
All right, we'll move into new business item 5.2, the review of the employment opportunities analysis and replacement of Chapter 9 of the Umatilla Comprehensive Plan. And I will just note that the opening statement is the same opening statement as I just read. However, since this is a legislative land use decision, there is one difference. Instead of making a decision, we would be making a recommendation for the council. That's the nature of this decision. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Good evening, Zach Rakhai, Community Development Director. The item brought before you this evening is the 2025 Economic Opportunities Analysis and updated replacement language to Chapter 9 Economic Development of the Umatilla Comprehensive Plan. We do have our team of consultants on here to present. So to present this evening, we have Brendan Buckley from Johnson Economics to take you through, and we'll turn it over to you, Brendan.
Thank you. Let me know if you can't hear me or can't hear me well. My name is Brendan Buckley. I'm with Johnson Economics, and I'm here with Andrew Parrish from MIG. And we are the consulting team that's been working with the city on this project to do what's called an economic opportunities analysis to update the comprehensive plan and also do an assessment of how much land you need in your urban growth boundary. We presented to a joint session with you folks and the city council back in July. We've done some updates since then, so we're just going to talk through what this is and quick reminder and talk about sort of the end findings that we've ended up with, and then talk about any the proposed changes to the comprehensive plan. So as you mentioned, could the host, could you please enable screen sharing? As you mentioned, what you're doing today is considering this as the Planning Commission, asking us any questions or making any comments you have, and then deciding if you want to recommend to the city council that they adopt this. They will be moving forward over the next couple months to have hearings on actual adoption. So I'm going to just walk through some slides. Can you folks see those slides there?
Yes.
Yeah, we got them now.
Thank you. Great. So what is the EOA? This is a project where we talk through local economic goals and target industries, economic development goals for the community. We come up with a forecast of economic trends and job growth that will result from that. We inventory the land that you have remaining in the city for commercial uses, meaning like retail and office, and also industrial uses, which include, the obvious things. Industrial uses also include data centers, which we'll talk more about. And then we compare the two. What is this? Our forecast of 20-year demand and job growth. What does that mean for your need for land over 20 years? how does that compare to the amount of land you have left? We've come up with findings and then some recommended changes to your comp plan, update it and refresh it because it's been a long time since it's been up. This has been the process we've gone through. We've had an advisory committee that we've talked to along the way. The main pieces are a trends analysis, then doing the demand forecast and the land inventory. As I talked about, that all goes together into the report. It's in your packet called the Economic Opportunities Analysis, and then recommendations coming out the end of it, and then that moves on to adopt. So what we found for current employment in Umatilla, you roughly have just under 3,000 jobs located locally in a range of sectors. The largest is agriculture, and that makes up roughly 1,000 of your 3,000 jobs. So that's obviously a large, important sector. Other important sectors are government, education, retail, construction, and so on. So you have a pretty broad mix. You have some sectors that are not as well represented right now, but maybe better represented in the future. So some of the white collar and sort of financial industry type sectors and things like that. So we would hope to see some more growth there. So how do we come up with our forecast for 20-year job growth? We start with the employment profile I just showed you. That's sort of our current baseline. And we, through the process of discussing trends and the city's goals, we've come up with a growth forecast. So as our sort of very starting point, we use a forecast that comes from the Oregon Employment Department. That comes out, that provides a growth rate for each of the industry sectors, but it's really not city specific. It's looking at the combination of Umatilla and Morrow counties. So it provides a really, really broad kind of idea. And it only comes out to, if we only use that growth rate, it would only come out to an annual growth of less than 1%. It does not reflect what Umatilla is experiencing. So what we do then is we come up with an adjusted growth forecast, and we talk about what are the target industries of the community, what can we foresee on the horizon, and what does that mean for more robust growth rate over the sort of baseline. So obviously in Umatilla and your whole region, the data center growth is a major part of it. Construction goes along with that because there's just massive construction projects happening now due to the data center growth. And then also because those are such large investments and because there's so much of that data center activity happening in your region, there's also what we call indirect and induced employment. That means that just this amount of economic activity that's going on means that all the other industries are also going to experience growth. Serve the new employees, to serve the construction workers, to provide new services and supplies to the data centers. So all this generates even more economic activity in the other sectors. The other thing we looked at on the commercial side, really the retail side, was the household growth you've experienced and will continue to experience. You've been growing quickly residentially as well. And so that also increases demand on the commercial side. Real quickly, just to show you why the growth needs to be adjusted. So what Umatilla County has experienced over the last 10 years is obviously growth much higher than 1%. So construction's been growing at 4% per year. Education and health at 3% per year. Those are the key industries that are supporting population growth. And then information sector, which includes data centers, has been growing at 15% per year. It's added 600 new jobs at the time the study was done. It's probably already more, and it's going to be much more than that. And so, as mentioned, the data centers are large projects in and of themselves. They bring direct employment, and then that indirect and induced With our adjusted forecast, again, it's 20-year forecast, so the end period is 2045. And so the adjusted forecast is forecasting almost 6,000 total jobs, so roughly 3,000 new jobs, or a doubling of the employment that you currently have. That includes 4 known data center projects that have been identified already within the current urban growth boundary, but also the demand for additional data centers on top of that, which would be outside the urban growth boundary, which we'll discuss more in a minute. So this adjusted forecast comes out to a growth rate of 3.6% growth annually. So obviously much more than the 0.7% from the baseline. But if you look at the past 10 years, the city has been achieving almost 5% growth annually in employment. So really, this growth forecast, while super robust, is still slightly on the conservative side compared to the amount of growth that you've actually experienced. So we feel pretty confident and comfortable with this forecast. On the right, you see where that growth is. The sort of light green bars are that original baseline forecast, and then the dark green are the adjusted forecast. So you see that, where the growth greatly sort of outstrips the baseline forecast or in information center with the data centers in construction, but then also in other sectors as well, including retail, education, healthcare, and the other things to help support the growing population. And so from that growth projection, the job growth projection, we do a calculation of sort of what type of real estate space do those jobs require, and translate that into how much land that really means for that type of real estate. And in that way, we can convert the jobs forecast into a land need forecast. And an important aspect of that in the case of Umatilla, other cities in the region, are the data centers. So this is just a example or sample of the very sort of prototypical data center you've been experiencing out there, particularly in the last 5 to 7 years. This is what we call a hyperscale data center. It generally takes 100 to 150 acres. It has 4 buildings. It can be up to about 1 million square foot total. They all require an electrical substation, which requires another 5 to 10 acres. And when completed, they tend to employ about 140 people on campus, and then all the support jobs as well that go along with that. But the trend we've seen over time is that the campuses are getting a little larger. So they used to be closer to 100 acres. Now, if you look at the last few, they tend to be more between 125 to 150. So for our 20-year employment land demand, for this table, we've broken out the demand from data centers on the right side there to kind of make it a little easier to see the need for the commercial land and sort of traditional general industrial land. So what we find is there's sort of in yellow, the gross acres needed. We find a need over the next 20 years of about 45 commercial gross acres and 70.5 acres gross acres of industrial zone land for non-data center industrial uses. On the data center side, we find a need for over 1,000 acres of properly, positioned and adequate land in large sites for data center growth. That includes 4 sites that are known, as I mentioned, but probably approximately 5 additional hyperscale data center sites beyond that. That's what you're seeing there. So you see the totals on the far right there. Most of the demand is in terms of the total acreage is for data center sites. That's because those sites are so large, and obviously that's been a key growing industry. So that is the demand side, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrew here from MIG to talk about the buildable land inventory that they work on. Andrew?
All right, thank you, Brendan. Yeah, Andrew from MIG. We typically address the supply side of this equation in this type of analysis. So this is a graphic showing like a funnel. We start with all the land inside the urban growth boundary. In this case, we're really focused on employment lands. So we take away everything that's for residential uses or things like that. We address lands that are for public facilities, so city-owned land that's kind of spoken for. We don't want to include that in our inventory. So we also address constraints like floodplains, wetlands, steep slopes. And what we're really looking for is a picture of net buildable acres once we account for things like future roadways, future infrastructure, so that we can have a sense of what's left buildable in the city today. There's often a case where there's infrastructure constraints or property owners that don't want to sell or other market drivers, and those turn into kind of policies and things that you can address in your comprehensive plan, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Next slide. So again, we're looking at land within the urban growth boundary, and we're looking for employment land specifically. So next slide. We use city of Umatilla zoning designations and county designations for the land that's outside the city limits currently to identify what's employment land. Next slide. And so this is an image of that. So this is all the land that we're really talking about. It is about 2,500 gross acres of land in the urban growth boundary. Next slide. So once we address constraints like mapped wetlands, floodplains, things like that, we reduce that acreage to about 2,100 acres of unconstrained land. Next slide. And then we look at whether there's anything developed on the site. So the state has a variety of rules that we need to follow about what to consider vacant or partially vacant or developed. Things that are committed are things that are typically owned by like a religious facility or charitable properties, or something that's public. So even if it passes a number of these other screens, it might show up there. So we try to get rid of everything that's clearly not going to develop for employment uses. Next slide. And we wind up with a map, something like this. So the red hatched areas are constraints, those wetlands, et cetera, I was talking about. Basically the yellow and the green parcels are the ones that are considered to be still available in the urban growth boundary. Again, based on a variety of rules that the state of Oregon has. Next slide. So in terms of acreage, based on current zoning and comprehensive plan designations, we've got about 77 acres, developable acres of land in commercial designations and 468 in industrial designations. So next slide here. So what we do is compare that availability of land to the kind of need, the demand that Brendan was talking about, and we wind up with either a surplus or a deficit, and I'll let Brendan kind of address this section here.
Thank you, Andrew. So yeah, that's the method by which we do the buildable land inventory. We work through that with the advisory committee and staff to try to really get the best idea of what's happening on all the individual properties. So what we're left with is a comparison of the 20-year demand for land that I discussed with the buildable land inventory. How do they line up? So what we've found is that on the commercial side, the amount of buildable land or the gross acreage of buildable land is, it exceeds the demand that we found. And so we do not find a current deficit of commercial land. in terms of gross acres in the urban growth boundary. On the industrial side, what we've done is we've broken out the total acres that Andrew found into the sites that we know have been identified for data centers, as mentioned. So those sites that we already know about that account for 4 planned data centers amount to 480 acres, or an average of 120 per site. So those have been added here to the data center inventory, leaving the rest of that industrial inventory for other types of industrial users. And so there we find that there is actually a slight deficit of land for general industrial uses. And then, of course, significant deficit for the data center uses, and that is the demand outside the urban growth boundary, as I mentioned. For all of these, there's a separate question of how well the inventory matches with demand, not just in terms of gross acreage, but in terms of the actual sites that are available and the sizes of those sites. So while we found that there's a surplus of commercial acreage overall, when we look at the actual sites that are remaining, we find that most of them are very small and there are not many medium sites left. And so what we've estimated is that there's still a need for 2 sites of commercial between 10 and 20 acres, what we would call a small to medium sized commercial site, but would be appropriate for, say, a big box center. So still a need for 2 of those sites, and as well as some smaller sites. So really what that means is, even though there's a finding of a surplus, there still is, the finding of this report is still that some additional commercial sites beyond your current inventory might be needed, if they're good locations and specifications for where. On the industrial side, we find the same thing. So we found, a pretty significant amount of gross acreage of industrial, but once we count for the data centers we know about and look at the actual types of sites that are left, what we find is that there's still a need for multiple additional sites that are 5 to 10 acres, or a couple that are 20 acres, and probably a 30-acre site. And then all of the larger sites you see here, we find a need for 5 sites of roughly 125 acres, and those would all be for data center development. So the findings coming out of this, the major important finding for your next steps is that finding of land need. That is something that the city will then have to, once this report is submitted to DLCD, or I'm sorry, the state, the city, you folks will have to work together to say, okay, what does it mean that we have this finding of need, and what do we intend to do about it? The report also includes some strategies and recommendations. In adopting this, you're not necessarily committing yourself to doing any of these, but these are more of recommendations at the end of the report. So first of all, you need to meet your employment land needs. There is a finding of additional needs, so you got to make sure, you'll have to, in the next steps, make sure that you have available sites. So considerations might be a UGB expansion. There might also be an opportunity for a UGB swap. If you have land within your current urban growth boundary that seems to be miszoned, it hasn't developed, there are reasons to think that it's not going to really be urbanized, you can look at removing that from your urban growth boundary and maybe adding that land somewhere else. Possible rezoning commercial or industrial lands, or even residential lands, if it also seems like they're kind of in the wrong spot. Other ways to, other things to consider is, can you use infill or use the land you have more efficiently, and reuse brownfield, like contaminated sites, those type of things. The other approaches are through your zoning and development code. Andrew and his team did a review of the development code, and we didn't find anything. I'll let Andrew speak to this in more detail, but we didn't find anything too pressing, I believe, to fix at this time. But when looking at your zoning code, really what this is about is making sure that it is addressing the needs of the industries that you would. So those are just the major broad brush takeaways of what's in the report. And then we want to move on to talking about the final piece, which is recommendations for actually updating your comprehensive plan, Chapter 9 on economics. And Andrew and his team have come up with some recommendations for how to update that part of your plan, and I'll turn that over to him.
All right, thank you, Brandon. Yeah, so one outcome of this economic opportunities analysis is a recommendation to update the comprehensive plan. So our recommended updates strike the entirety of the Chapter 9 of your comp plan currently, which parts of which are dating back to 1975. There's some other parts that are a little bit more recent, but in general, it seems like it's just been kind of tacked onto rather than addressed holistically. So I think the cleanest thing to do would be to provide new language that references the most recent work that's been done about the economic needs of Umatilla. And we've provided some new goals and policy language from the recommendations of the EOA. And on the right here is, a table that's in your comp plan currently, known developments, 1975 to 1985. So I was born in 1984, so I thought this was pretty interesting to see there. Next slide. So the new recommended language is, I've included all of it in the slide here, but there's a new overarching goal. The city aspires to remain a strong and vibrant economy and a good place to live, supporting health retention, expansion of existing businesses while welcoming new opportunities. So we've provided some new narrative from the EOA report that talks about the city's position as a regional hub, the employment forecasts that Brendan went over, and a summary of land supply and demand there, just kind of as background for where you are today. Next slide. And then a series of economic development goals and policies. These might wind up being things that end up as criteria for a potential rezone. You know, somebody could say the city's stated goal is X. This is in the comp plan, or just kind of stated priorities of the city. But it's things like supporting traditional and emerging industries and businesses in the city, maintaining and enhancing partnerships with organizations in the city and in the region, promoting small businesses, attracting a skilled workforce, strengthening downtown, and economic resilience. So all good things, and each of these has a series of policies underneath them that I believe are in your materials, and I don't need to go over in too much detail here. Next slide. And I think that brings us to the end of our presentation, and we're happy to entertain discussion, questions, comments from you all.
Yeah, yes, it's probably about a 3-point question. First, just so you know, I've been told I appreciate the data it's very, very detailed and great data, and I endorse it. And I think what you're saying is what we need to do. So these questions are just floating in my mind. I'm not in conflict with anything you said. I'm in support of it. But that said, I just need to understand. I think you said that this included the UGB and the city limits when you were talking about all the acreage, and then the deficits were outside of the UGB. That's included, correct?
Correct. So we basically do that inventory within the UGB. We estimate demand, and some of that demand is met by what we found in inventory within the UGB.
Right, and I understood that part of it.
Right,
And
yeah.
I guess the next part I want to make sure I got straight was that it had 4 data centers we know of, and possibly 5 more was which got us to almost 1,200 needed acres, correct?
Right.
Okay, so the question I have about that, the data centers can't get water or sewer unless they are in the city limits, not the UGB. So we have to annex the city limits into the UGB, which we did up there on Powerline, and it's difficult. In the last 10 annex requests, only 2 of them approved by the state because we're taking it into the county. So when you talk about constraints, I would think that that would be a bigger constraint than some of the ones that were listed, because you can't utilize that for a data center unless it's annexed, right? A data center can't go into the UGB and get water and sewer from Umatilla. Right? I mean, is that correct or no? That's what we were told about why we annexed the one that's off of Lind Road. And so we annexed the road to make it into the city limits.
Yeah,
I-
staff would have to speak more to that. So solving all of those issues is not, you know, is getting into next steps after this report, after the finding of need.
Yeah.
But your point is well taken, as if that should be considered a constraint up front.
I didn't mean to get too far into the weeds. I think I kind of, in talking through that with you, when we annexed that we didn't change the city limits. We annexed the UGB into the city. When we changed the city limits is when we changed the UGB and went out to the freeway. That's what so that's the difference. So it wouldn't be a constraint as long as we're using the UGB. It becomes a constraint when we have to expand the UGB, right? We have to go to the state and the county to expand the UGB.
Yeah, Chairman Nobles, from what I understand, and granted, I'm still new to the job and new to Oregon, with the nuance of state planning laws and everything. But what this enables us to do is update the comprehensive plan, because we have identified through this study the available land that is needed. So having this work done can better enable us to expand our urban growth boundary in the future, which is one of the plans. This is one of the steps that we need to take in order to make those state approvals a little bit easier to obtain.
Okay.
You know, and annexation is certainly part of it. I don't want to misquote myself here, just being fairly new to the community and new to the state on that. But yeah, certainly urban levels of service for utilities certainly plays a factor in annexation. But yes, this groundwork and the long-term goal of this is to better enable Umatilla to obtain those lands through UGB expansion. And satisfy the goals of the state planning regulations.
I think that's what I was looking for. That makes a lot of
Nancy, I
sense. So
think,
we're doing this.
has some corrections to add for my stuff.
Not corrections. So, let's say you have a property in the UGB, you have the option to annex. So, and that option is, that process is an application process, and I think the difficulty as an applicant is having to take care of the infrastructure. But that option is set. So the more we expand, the more the property owners have that option to annex.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
I think that point you made it turned the light on for me, because we're going to need to expand the UGB like we did up here. And if we don't have a comprehensive plan that endorses that, then the odds aren't as good of expanding it. So that's the purpose for making this comprehensive plan fit what we're going to need to do.
Yeah, that's correct. And so it kind of gives us that ammunition in our back pocket to say, hey, we've identified this through the study that we need these many acres. So therefore this meets our comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
As we build our case for UGB expansion.
I appreciate that. Thanks. And just because I have these brilliant minds up here, I got to ask this one question. I'll keep it short. I'm using up everybody's time. I was on the committee a couple of 4 years ago that we did the 20-year comprehensive plan with Brandon, and some people from the state came in. And when we were doing it, we knew about the new data centers that were going to be built, and they told us we couldn't factor that in. We were required to use the historical growth. And we're like, the historical growth has been flat. We know we have the permits applied for these things, and they wouldn't let us build it into the comprehensive. And so we knew this comprehensive plan was going to, it's a matter of when. And now it's really nice to see that you can do this, but did it change, or how come they're letting you use the things that we're predicting to happen to factor into the comprehensive plan when they wouldn't let us do that a few years ago?
Yeah, it has changed. They have sort of been, to the state's credit, they do tend to roll a little bit with the feedback they hear, and they're trying to improve the process all along. So the rules have changed a bit, but the other thing that's changed is that the evidence of data center development in the Columbia Basin is so overwhelming that they don't really question it anymore. So, I mean, we tell them that these things are happening and the evidence is all on the ground, and the evidence of more demand is evident. So, um, that's the other aspect of it, is they um have accepted this activity and that there's going to be more of it. And yeah.
Well, that's a good thing. That's almost as good as how fortunate we are to have you guys, because that what you're putting together for us is going to make it a lot more convincing than what we were doing as farmers and local guys. That's your presentation is amazing and it's great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, thank you.
So, do we want to make a motion for a recommendation?
I move that we, oh, I move that we close the hearing.
I second.
Commissioner Gutierrez? Commissioner Cooper?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I just want to thank those guys one more time before we make the motion. That was very good, very thorough, and thank you for all the time and effort you put in. It's fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that it was on our level. You explained everything really well, made it very clear.
Thank you. It was our pleasure, and it's been really great working with staff and with the advisory committee. It's been a good experience working with the city of Umatilla on this.
All right, I move that we recommend to City Council to approve the comprehensive plan and zoning regulations amendments PA-1-20.
Can I just ask one thing? So do we want to recommend that we eliminate the chapter 9 completely and revise it? Is that what they were asking? The one who said in the bullet point to eliminate it. What's that? Gentlemen, did you ask us to did you recommend that we eliminate chapter 9 and redo it completely? Did I see that?
Yeah, that's how it's written. It's part of the application, yeah. So
Does
that's
that
how it's
need to
written.
be in our motion and our recommendation that we eliminate chapter 9? Okay, it's already in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
I second.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you guys for your presentation. We sure appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to commissioner information and discussion. Any discussion items from the staff?
None this time. Do the commissioners have any questions?
And when are you moving the scale house up to the freeway? That's that every year.
I do, I think our next planning commission meeting is scheduled for October 28th, I believe. We will be looking to do some of the training, whether it's a, 10 or 15-minute video or something like that. We would also just be looking at what the agenda holds as well. So we are actively reviewing, current and new projects coming in. Of course, it's Rock the Locks week as well. So we are trying to cram everything in before we shift duties to concert work. So yeah, just keep an eye out for the October 28th Planning Commission agenda, and we will work on things from there.
It's kind of a tradition for any new staff members their first year to play cowbell at the festival. So I'll bring you a cowbell.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to be sad to miss that.
Oh, I'll record it.
We'll close the meeting at this time. We have a motion to close the meeting.
Make a motion, we close the meeting.
I second.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper,
Aye.
motion passes. Meeting is adjourned, 7:28 PM.